I'm Mel Stewart, and this is the SwimSwam podcast. Joining me today, we have a very special guest. A lot of our readers have asked us to interview him. Everybody wants to get inside of his head. I am, of course, talking about Amico. He is the mind. He's the co-head coach of Seward TSUNAMI SWIM CLUB, the mind behind Lydia Jacoby and that success. And, thanks for making some time to talk to us. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me on. And I look forward to this. I'll do my best.
When I reached out to folks and just said, hey, this is who I'm having on, I said, what would you want out of this conversation? The overwhelming response was, when does this guy sleep? Because based on everyone's crawling your LinkedIn page, they're checking out your resume. As I understand it, you're co-head coach of Seward Swim Club. You're also the head coach of Seward, the high school swim team, and the head track and field coach at Seward High School. You also run your own business, Amico Fitness, and it sounds like you're a very busy person. So just in terms of time management, how are you doing that?
So for starters, the business, that hasn't really been active since, I think, 2013. There's an opportunity that came up to help the the employees of the city to kind of get a hold of their fitness. And that was kind of short-lived. The incoming administration didn't want to keep it going, so it sort of died a quiet death. I have not updated my LinkedIn or my resume like I should have. I got to get on that. So, yeah.
Here's how I would answer that. I was too expensive. My expertise was way too high. It was too deep, and the city of Seward couldn't handle it, and they were wimps and they pushed off. But I do appreciate your honesty. What is most fascinating to everyone that I've talked to is that you do have this. You are a track and field coach, and that's I'm coming to you from Austin, Texas, as we're doing this interview today. There's some track and field coaches down here that are let's just say they have a lot of knowledge, and they have kids who swim, and they have very strong opinions about how we train kids swimming. I don't want to reveal too much, but I mean, I know some coaches, track and field coaches, who have kids who are elite swimmers, and they've taken a more hands-on approach to what their kids are doing. How has track and field influenced your coaching in the water?
Yeah, so in my estimation, and again, I gotta just full disclosure here. I'm no expert, right? I'm just trying my best every day, trying to learn every day. I'm a student. I'll never not be a student. But in my estimation, there's a ton of overlap between the two sports. They're both very, very technically demanding. They're both obviously physiologically demanding. I mean, the adaptations that you get from like a track workout are maybe a little more dynamic and put a little more stress on the body because you're load bearing. So then you have to manage the workload a lot more. You got to scale it down. It's roughly like a 4-to-1 kind of conversion ratio on the distances and stuff. So with that, I just sort of think about it and scale it down or scale it up depending on the sport.
My goal is to get into really dive deep on breaststroke and get into like a breaststroke clinic with you if we can. But before I get into that, having this experience with track and field, I'm just curious as to how this impacted your training with Lydia and your other swimmers during the pandemic, because I think a lot of coaches felt lost and they felt the pressure. Was there an influence there?
So there's been a few kind of clear lines of like demarcation where the training is like stepped up or been adjusted along the way. One of those was February of 2020, kind of the ground zero of our pandemic hitting the States. They were actually in Seattle where it first hit for Speedo sectionals there. And it got canceled. They came back. I met with Lydia and her mom within a week at Res Art. It's our meeting spot. It's basically the only place in town. But right away, I was thinking like, sure, you're qualified for trials from November of 2018. But going into 2020, it was like, all right, we're gonna do our best, see what we can get done with fitness and technique and all that, and see what happens, But then Speedo sectionals gets canceled. I meet with them within a week, and I was already thinking then, not that it's any big deal, that like, wow, I think it's going to get pushed, if not canceled. If it gets pushed, that really, really sets us up for a nice run at things in 2021. So it just happened to work out like that. And yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
It's before we move on, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you should know that Seward is Seward, Alaska. And just some background on Solomon. He is a BA in kinesiology from Indiana University. You served in the Marine Corps. So are you, tell me about that.
Yeah, real quick though, it's a BS, not a BA.
Excuse me, that's all right. Of course, it is a science. Sorry, it's a BS. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I was kind of a very underachieving, mediocre student in high school. Not a very great GPA. I knew my friends were going into college and accumulating a lot of debt and dropping out with tens of thousands of dollars of debt and not really any better off. So one of my best friends asked me during lunch if I would go see the Marine recruiter. I thought about it for 10, 15 seconds, and he waited patiently, and I was like, yeah, all right, let's go. And that recruiter saw like I had a couple of nuts and bolts still functioning upstairs, and I was physically fit. So he was pretty excited to get me to join. And I went in. I left for boot camp September 10th, 2001. Kind of a pretty big stepping off date there, because the next day I was actually stuck in Seattle for a week because of the towers going down. But that kind of just snapped me into focus, instead of thinking like, oh yeah, just going on a leisurely cruise around the Mediterranean, meet a lot of fun people. It was like, we're going to war. So yeah, from that, I got attached to some different units. We went over and invaded Iraq. We got done with that. I went to Okinawa. I got out early on a school cut from Okinawa, went into Indiana University. And my thinking at that time, my motivation was that I wanted to win we have a famous mountain race here called Mount Marathon. It's like a 5K, so it's not a full marathon, but it's very technical in that it goes up and down. And yeah, I really, really love it. It's super fun. So I was just trying to meet the pre-optometry requirements. It's basically like pre-med requirements. And then along the way, I found that major, and I was like, oh yeah, well, this is pretty practical for myself. Not really thinking I was going to be a coach at the time. And then, yeah, I love the coursework, and I definitely applied it to my own training. And I was still thinking I was going to be an optometrist. I graduated in 2011, and I went and worked for an optometrist in Anchorage for about a year. At the same time, I was volunteering, helping out cross country, basketball, and track down here in Seward. So driving up and back from Anchorage. And it got to the point where I was like, optometry, like 90% of their business model is trying to get people in nice frames. And that's not, that aesthetic, that kind of thing. That's not really what I'm about. I like a little more substance. Not that there's anything wrong with looking good, but that's just not where my passion lies. So yeah, I ended up kind of making that decision that, all right, well, what am I going to do from here? So I kind of pivoted, thinking I was going to be a physical therapist, just helping people move better, seemed pretty pure and, healthy, like I would enjoy it. So along those lines, in 2019, I went down and did a period of observation with a really good physical therapist that's kind of in the higher sports medicine field and like performance as well. It's a really nice combination. His name's Kyle Sella. He's out of Ketchum, Idaho. Really good mentor for me. But yeah, so just eventually once we started like having success with a lot of our kids, it was kind of like, well, you know what, like maybe I'll just stick with coaching. I like that a lot more than, helping just anybody. I was really like helping people find their peak fitness and seeing what they can truly do and just give them the tools to succeed. And then a lot of what I try to do, it might come off as like lazy, but like just give them the tools and then get out of the way, like they're going to do it. They want to work. And I feel like sometimes young coaches especially can kind of overdo the instruction part and just kind of lose their impact.
Well, I appreciate the background. Thank you for your service. I appreciate you sharing that. And it sounds like you have an analytical mind and you want to do things that fit and make sense. Before we reached that jumping off point where the pandemic began, I wanted that backstory from you. Bring it back to that moment where we're February and you see this thing going off. And I mentioned that coaches were overwhelmed. What was your plan? You sat down. What was your plan heading forward? I understand that you had the light bulb moment of, wow, I have a young athlete. This gives me another year, potentially, another year of development. What was the plan February, March going forward with the restrictions that everyone experienced?
Right. So that was a really tough kind of month and a half, 2 months there. We were in the middle of our club season, and then all of a sudden, hey, no pool access, no access to the kids, can't even meet with them. So, we're trying to meet with our board. Megan and I, that's the other co-head coach of Seward TSUNAMI. I've learned so much from her. She's amazing. And we complement each other really well. We kind of hashed out a plan to have Zoom meetings before everybody got, Zoomed to death. That was a thing for sure that spring. We had some Zoom meetings with the kids. I racked my brain and came up with some various like at-home exercises they can do to keep the fitness going. It's no substitute for like in-person instruction, but it was at least something to keep that forward momentum going. And then with some of our higher level swimmers and athletes, I set up kind of an online documentation system. And this is maybe the big kind of thing that I think really helped us. We did this online documentation where we just looked at all the different like facets you could kind of kind of pin down and find out what works as far as like, all the things that the athletes have to take care of, like their sleep. That's my number one. Recovery, with that preparation, of course, going into it. Sleep, hydration, fuel, start tracking all that stuff, see what works, see what your optimum levels of performance are based on those parameters, and get that kind of outside, stuff just to have the foundation really solidly in place. And then along with that, the kids are writing their notes, their subjective feedback. And, I'm sitting back with my wannabe scientist hat on and saying, all right, well, that looks good, or maybe we can adjust this here and there. And then just sort of really gave us a nice tool, a working document, if you will, to fine tune the process and get us kind of dialed in.
I've talked to Lydia, I talked to her mom. Did you guys build something? My understanding is that at a certain point you had to build something for her to train with. What was that?
Yeah. So we built a squat rack. And I didn't really build any of it. I reached out to a friend of mine that's a power lifter, and he had the same thing going on. He couldn't train with the gym. So he built himself a thing. He posted that on his social media, and I reached out to the guy and I said, hey, would you mind sharing your plans on that? Cause he's, lifting, I think that guy's squatting like 600-700 pounds. So he's like, yeah, here you go. So I said, all right, guys, I think this will be safe enough for what Lydia's lifting. I don't think she's going to be squatting 600-700 anytime soon. But yeah, here's a blueprint or whatever, and if I can help you build it, I'll be there for you. But her and Rich kind of took that on and built it, and it's a nice little squat rack.
Is it safe to say that bringing it back to what the light bulb moment where you're like, "Ooh, we could potentially have another year because of this pandemic, another year of development." I think that's something that we saw eventually come to pass, which was our Olympic team. We had a lot of breakthrough young athletes. I see, and you'll see the coaches on deck at meets, and they're walking around and they're grinning because they've got talent that's coming on quickly. It's like life is getting interesting. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. It's when you could return and train. How do you structure a season? Can you walk me through a season? Give me, how many yards you're doing at each stage. Do you do 6-week cycles, 3-week cycles, 24-day cycles?
Sure. Yeah. So our periodization model, what we've done is sort of looked at like kind of 6-month blocks, and then look at any kind of meets that may fit within the training parameters, because within that macro cycle of 6 months, we're going to break it up into mesocycles and microcycles, about a week each. But the mesocycles, we're looking at like 4 to 6 weeks. We like to do about a 2-week transition into a new like training stimulus. And at this point, we've gone through, our different parameters. So it's not necessarily new. But yeah, the early part, since Lydia is more of a sprinter, we haven't done a muscle biopsy, but I'm pretty sure she's more fast twitch than slow twitch. We do the aerobic stuff, the endurance lifting. We do that more early in the season, and we build up to maybe 4,000. We'll hit that. We'll get up to that on week 3 or 4, and then we'll bring it back down to what we're typically at is around 2,500 yards to 3,000 yards, and a lot of lactate stuff. And then VO2 max stuff, we do try to couple that in with the endurance stuff, especially maybe do 2 of those a week while we're building up the aerobic base. And then, from there, we maybe keep 1 of those a week and then ramp up the lactate stuff. And then we try to maintain speed through the whole thing.
So am I understanding you correctly? I know you're swimming in a yard. My understanding is at Seward, you have a 6-lane, 25-yard pool, correct? How many sessions a week?
Yeah, so we're doing right now we're doing 4 afternoon sessions a week, 3 morning lifts, 2 morning swims. The morning swim, all the swims are about 90 minutes.
6 sessions in the water, 3 in the gym, and you're topping out at 4,000 yards. Is that correct per session?
Yeah.
But
yeah. That's
but
only in that early phase of the season.
That's early phase. So when you're getting into the meat of your season, it's 2,500 yards a session, and so you're getting after it. So what's the intensity level when it's out of curiosity, if you're 2,500 yards a session, how much of that is warm up?
So depending on the day, right? Like, so we do, and I'm continually evolving, learning, trying to get better. But what I've done recently in the last year or so is just done a kind of a all around warm up, a 250 or a 500 woo, we call it. Have a little fun with it, but it goes stretch, just get in and start moving around. Stretch, skull, pull, streamline kick on your back, and then build up to just kind of get fired up and get into the heart of the practice. Then we'll open up. We kind of break it up into thirds after the warm up. We'll open up with a set of drill, a 500 drill, maybe 2 sets of drill if we're going to work 2 strokes or more, and then some kind of race pace, faster stuff. And then every now, maybe once a week, we'll go into more technique stuff. So we'll do maybe 835s off the block to get that really aggressive approach into that first turn and a really nice breakout, and just kind of getting into that. And then maybe we'll do a turn set where we just go try to get full speed by the flags, and then we'll time it from when their head crosses the flags into the wall, and then coming out, and then track that objective data as well. A lot of what I try to do though is make it subjective, particularly because we don't have a long course pool, but rather than look at that as like this huge limiting factor, we kind of look at it as like, well, maybe this is an advantage because we can like adjust on the fly in the moment in a race, and we've seen that play out actually. Like you see her, I think over in Berlin or Budapest, one of her races, she could tell she was going to be like way long into the wall. So like 3 or 4 strokes from the wall, she took maybe a 3/4 of a stroke and kind of pinned it down. And like, I feel really good about that. Like that. I mean, I would love to have the stroke count and timing of a full 50-meter pool, but without that, we're just going to do the best we can and really rely on that subjective kind of feel and feedback,
6 sessions a week, 3 in the gym. And shame on me for not bringing this in, but I want to have some perspective, just a lens on this. Your background, do you have a background in swim?
So this is, I mean, I'm not so embarrassed about it anymore, but when I was 11, I was on the swim club. And I was actually into breaststroke. That was the one that just came naturally to me. I loved it. But then my coach was like, all right, well, you got to learn fly. And without any kind of like, I didn't have good technique and definitely didn't have any strength, mentally as well as physically. And I tried it. I basically waterboarded myself for a few strokes and I said, all right, swimming, thanks. That'll be all, so that was the end of my swim, like my personal swim experience. As far as like competitive swimming, I did swim class in high school and I can swim, but I'm not competitive. I was definitely way more into like, I played football, track and wrestling, but I was definitely way more into like the track thing. I seemed to maybe have a little bit of talent there. And yeah, sorry, that kind of trailed off.
No. It's understood. You shouldn't feel ashamed. You're in good company. The chief executive of FINA, the international governing body, has about your level of experience in swim, and he swam breaststroke. And he's Brent Nowicki. The person that coached me, and a lot of the assistant coaches when you're at elite level, that they're there with you moment to moment, day to day, beat by beat. And Joe Hendy was one of those guys for me, and he did not swim, but he was a student of the sport, and he was just so connected to every single detail. I think that there's an advantage to coming at the sport with that mindset, knowing, hey, I don't have this experience, this deep experience as an athlete or competitor in the sport. It seems like we have a lot of experience with coaches that are successful with your background. So interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm just so I'm a little bit older, but from my perspective, in my day, we would do 100,000 yards a week. We trained. We did a lot of work. We trained a lot. And a majority of it was in second and third gear. How would you describe if you're 2,500 sessions and this is through the meat of your season? You've done your 4,000 session and you've ramped up. How much of this is race pace?
So maybe 500 to 1,000, depending on the day. Lydia kind of touched on it. I recently, through actually having Lydia on a national junior team, USA Swimming had this coaching continuing education grant for us. Megan wasn't in a spot where she could take it on. She's been exploring her boating passions. Really, really happy for her for that. So it was available, and I knew of a course through NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association, that was coming up. And I talked to Kelsey Floyd, and she was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like we'll sign off on that. So we went ahead and did it. And with that, one of the one of the instructors in that course, they introduced me to this flexible and fluid periodization. So, on any given day, like even just yesterday, I scrapped a bunch of like latter half of my workout, our workout. It's going to be just if we had worked some breaststroke stuff. We don't do breaststroke every day. I've had some coaches be like, "Do you only do breaststrokes?" Well, no, I mean, maybe not as proficient in the other strokes, but we do all the strokes. Yeah. So last night, just reading the temperature of the room, and that's, I think, a really valuable skill for a coach, is to be able to like just read the kids, read the athletes, and yeah, maybe today is not the day to die on that hill. Let's just save it. And live to fight another day. I say that a lot because kids are really hard on themselves if they're not keeping pace, or they're just not. They don't have that zip on a day-to-day basis. And with that, rather than like fight and grind through that, I feel like it's better to just say, you know what, like you're good. Like you're still, the water is going to be here tomorrow. You're going to swim again, and we'll come back another day, and like it's going to be fine. Like you're not going to forget all of a sudden. And yeah, so we try to keep it pretty flexible, fluid, and kind of day to day with this big overall like bird's eye view of the whole program and keeping that consistent. So I was telling one of our new assistant coaches the other day, like kind of the way I operate is I think about, maybe the last 3 weeks of training, where I want to go with the next 3 weeks of training, here, how that fits up with our mesocycle plan, and just always be ready to pull the trigger and adjust like day to day,
That you stole my follow-up question, which is, how this, and this is a huge conversation in sport. It's a hot topic. It's how much, if you're backstroke, breaststroke, how much of your practice is backstroke, breaststroke. If you're someone like Lydia, what?
Yeah. So, she said she didn't know 20 to 40%. I watched you guys' interview once or twice. But yeah, I would say we're fairly even. Maybe we're a little heavy on breaststroke, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I like to kind of split things up, long axis some days and short axis other days, and other days like all IM stuff. So we're constantly hitting every stroke. And then the fifth stroke, of course, underwater dolphins. That's a major point of emphasis for the last 5-6 years for me. I honestly, I feel like it's pretty even, but maybe it's not.
It's if oftentimes in practices, your coach will give you something. He's working a system, and you're going to get after it, and it's your choice. You can some freestyle or backstroke, or does Lydia swim breaststroke? If you're doing race pace, it's like, hey, you need to be swimming breaststroke, or does that matter? You're like, no, you can swim the other strokes. You're still going to benefit. What's that dynamic?
Yeah. So honestly, a big part of my approach is trying to empower and educate these kids so they can make their own decisions. I don't really like the coaching model where there's a codependency. So like, we get to these big meets, I'm down there in Omaha on deck, and all these big name coaches and big name swimmers, and it's really impressive and awesome. And I'm seeing, these coaches like, do the pacing, walk up and down the side of the pool with their athletes, and it's just not the way I necessarily want to approach it. Like, I feel like you're at that big meet, like you're pretty good. Like I need to coach. I want to err on the side of less is more at that point, like maybe get a time or two and see if you're on, and like, otherwise I'm just there, if you need me, I'm there. But we've done all our coaching in the years before this. Like, I'm not going to try and overstir the soup, so to speak, and get it into a froth. I'm going to let it settle and, get it to where the athlete wants it. And if I see anything that I want to adjust, then I'll say something, but I like to just sort of give them ownership of it. So then it's really theirs,
I love that. I had a lot of friends who did crazy stuff at big meets. They do 2,000 yards of warm up, and they do all sorts of pace, and they'd always be checking their times. I had a rule the last 6 years of my career where my coach there was no clock. So if you did anything where you're trying to rev the engine, you'd rev the engine to feel, to, you know, to get the brain booted up, but never look at the time, because it would just trip you out. Either it's like, yeah, we're really on, or you're really on, but did that feel right? It's so we threw the clock away. And so I appreciate your mentality in terms of like, yeah, let them, they've gotten this far. Let them manage it. That's a good question though. I mean, you're showing up on deck of trials. Was that your first trials?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was your first trial. So you walk into the Omaha is kind of stupid. It's just like, it is a huge venue. This is and completely an outlier in swimming. How did you handle that in terms of just your own stress levels with what was on the line?
Yeah. Well, I like to be prepared. So I read the meet kind of information several times, and kind of got the venue layout, and made sure that the family, the kid, everybody knew sort of what our kind of process was gonna be, our schedule, our day to day. And then we actually were, Mike Unger came and found us, outgoing COO. He's now with FINA, but he found us and he's like, hey, do you guys want to see the like kind of walkthrough where the athletes will go? And I mean, I was like, yeah, like, of course. So he kind of held our hands through that. And that made me a lot more comfortable, because that was the last like little thing, like actually walking through the venue and knowing where to go when, because the last thing you want at that stage is some like, oh crap, I don't know where I'm at, and where am I going? Where should I be? So he walked us through that, and yeah, I mean, I felt great about it. I felt like the kid was gonna be great. She's a gamer. We've seen this like every step of the way. If the competition is at a higher level, she brings her best, and it's pretty special. It's awesome.
Mike was my team. He was my team manager back in the 1990s, when I think his salary was like $18,000-$19,000 a year. He's been there a long time, and I do appreciate that he found you guys and said, "Hey, let's walk the facility." That's cool. That's really cool. Changing gears a little bit, Lydia can crack that 100. She's got it. The lightning is there. Do you see her expanding to the 200 meter breaststroke?
Yeah, maybe.
Or is she going to be an Adam Peaty type?
It's funny because her and Adam Peaty got to interact a little bit in Tokyo, just behind the blocks, whatever, waiting for their teammates. And I think something he said to her was that, so if you break the world record in the 100, they're not going to ask you to swim the 200 anymore. So, I think, if Lydia has her way about it, she's going to see if she can't do that and then maybe get out of some of those 200s. But at the same time, she also wants to be a versatile swimmer, and we are constantly trying to improve all of her strokes. And, maybe in college, she can get points in the 100, 200 breast, but maybe even the 200 IM. She's dropped just under 4 seconds from her best time previously to this season. She had a 209.31. She won the 200 IM at our state meet as a freshman. That was a really exciting race. But then, this season, she dropped down to, I think it was a 105.70. So it's pretty exciting. We're still seeing progress in other events too. So yeah, maybe she'll swim those and try to get her college team some points in those as well. But I think, ultimately she'll probably be more of a 100 breaststroker, and probably do pretty good at that.
You're a unique coach. I feel like if I asked 10 coaches in a similar situation, they'd be like, "Oh, dude, we're definitely working on the 200. That's in our back pocket. We're just about to pull it out." But I love the perspective of Adam Peaty saying, "Yeah, you break the world record in the 100 breast. It's there." So here's the question. With the 100 breast world record is a 104.13. Lily King, I think that's correct. Let me do a double check here. It is 104.13. So do you guys have like the splits written down? Are the splits written down on the wall? Are they in like 6 foot lettering on the side of the pool? World record? No,
we don't overemphasize that kind of stuff, right? It's more about, and maybe it's cliche or cheesy, but we're more about the journey, the process, and just every day get better. And the outcome, the goal, a lot of times it happens if you focus on like bringing your absolute best every day. So we've said, yeah, maybe we can go for that, but it's not like we're hammering that. We're not. A lot of what I try to do is like take stress away from the situation rather than pile it on. Like there's going to be enough internal and inherent stress in the situation. I don't need to throw a bunch more on.
I keep coming back to, and I feel like I'm dating myself when I do this, but it's like I'm sort of, my jaw slack when I look down on like 6 sessions a week, 3 in the gym. It's like, because maybe I'm jealous, because that's it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So you have 9 sessions a week, but you're in Alaska. So do you have disruptions from weather? Are sessions missed? Is weather a disruption?
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's more so in track. It's brutal trying to have a track season in Alaska. It's really, really tough. But yeah, we've had, so actually funny enough, it was November 28th, 2018. She qualifies. We actually had, and our club name is Tsunami. This is kind of cheesy, but we actually had an earthquake, like a 5.6, 5.7. We're on the water. We had tsunami warnings, and we had to cancel that day. But yeah, we do have those interruptions, and you just gotta, get the word out and move forward when you can.
I've never been to Alaska, but everyone that's been there said it's something you got to do. It's beautiful, and a lot of people go there, and their soul dips into the soil.
Yeah.
I imagine. I'm curious, did your phone start ringing after trials in the Olympics? I imagine you had a lot of job offers. I imagine you were in high demand. Is that fair to say?
No, man. No, I don't think so at all. I have not had anybody reach out, and I think maybe I got to update the resume and that'll happen, but I'm also pretty content where I'm at. I'm not looking to climb the ladder or anything. I'm looking to help a lot of kids just understand their bodies and age well. That's kind of I like to think of it as like a more comprehensive contemporary model. And that we're like, the big thing I noticed when I got kind of forced or talked into coaching swimming was like, all right, these kids, these athletes, and this is no disservice to swimming. I love swimming. All right. But you're exercising like astronauts, it's non-load bearing. And a little personal thing on my own journey, right? I was in Bloomington and around my grandmother a lot, and she was an avid swimmer. But she sort of just thought like that was going to be enough. Well, then, 40 years of recreational swimming for her, and then between the ages of 60 and 70, humans have a degradation of their inner ear, the vestibular process. So instead of swaying against 2 fulcrum points, they start swaying forward and back. Then you have the falls. If you don't have that bone density built up, you break a wrist. You fight real hard for 6 months, get your quality of life, your independence back. And then you fall down again, you break a hip, and it's just sort of I feel like it's a nasty downward spiral. And I'd really like the swim community as a whole to invest a lot more in a comprehensive model is what I think of it. And advance the page on strength training, and make that built right into the swim workout. Like, we're doing a nice heavy session in the morning with lifting. And then if it's super heavy, a brand new, like new weights on there, and it's really taxing on the system, well, we'll scale it back in that afternoon session, and then maybe have a harder swim session in the following day, so, but my thinking is, especially with girls, women, is that osteoporosis is a major thing. It's part of the female athlete triad, and just trying to get them ahead of that. So, like, sure, we want to hit Olympic gold medal. That's great, but I'm more concerned about, all right, what's this person, this human going to be like when they're 60, 70? Are they going to have that like bone density and that coordination and all that tied together? So they're a very well-rounded athlete, and they're going to age gracefully. That's my genuine hope for all the kids I coach, is that they know what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And then they're going to see that they're going to age better than their peers that don't do the same work.
You're going to impact them for a lifetime, which is what all the greatest coaches want. When an athlete achieves something that's amazing, and I know athletes do it at different levels, We have all kinds of, we got friends who never made it to the big stage, to the Olympics, or medaled, and they did extraordinary things. There's something unique when an athlete does what Lydia did. You're bound to them. You know, it's on the day that I died, I'll be thinking about my coach. You have that connection, and a unique moment and a unique story with Lydia. What was your feeling? What was your emotion? What, you know, it might have been at trials, but what was it at the, you know, or at the Olympics? What was going through your mind when you're like, oh my God, this is happening?
Well, honestly, it was kind of all the way back to, let's see, the summer of 2020. She spent about 5 weeks solid up in Anchorage with Northern Lights Swim Club. Really, really great club there. Great coaches, great team environment. And she's documenting all her workouts, and I'm seeing that they're pushing her harder than she's been pushed in the past. And her notes, she's saying that she's loving it. And then from that was like kind of my cue to be like, all right, we're gonna start loading you up. We're gonna start pushing it in the weight room too, and see how that affects the whole thing. But it was more about having her drive that process, and only when she was ready and kind of showed that in her notes. All right, we'll push it. And then when we started, I mean, US Open San Antonio, she, you know, that's the opening meet of the season, I think. She comes out and swims the 4th fastest swim in the world at that point. And, you know, I'm kind of having conversations with the high school administration, like, hey, like, you all need to be ready, because there's got to at least be some kind of acknowledgement and like whatever. But I'm telling you, like, I think it's happening, you know. So I was seeing it unfold, and I could, you know, that's kind of what I try to do, is plot out the course for whatever, 2-3 months ahead, a year, whatever it may be. And yeah, at that point I was like, oh yeah, I think it's going to happen, you know. And so from there, we just kept progressing her at an appropriate rate, you know. And then, yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, you're looking for one specific moment, but just through those processes and like these specific like strength cycles, she improved her maxes across the different like lifts, and we started doing some more like advanced type lifting. I'm not necessarily going to share that on this podcast because of safety concerns and qualified people to teach. But yeah, we got her some really nice advanced kind of strength stuff, and we saw her, you know, that 6-second drop in the last 2 years. I think a lot of that, certainly not all of it, and it's kind of awkward to try to suss out what did everything, but I think those two things, those 2 6-week cycles we had, really, really helped. And then we saw in, you know, Mission Viejo, that was where I think most of the United States swim community was like, oh, okay, maybe who's this, you know, because, you know, Annie was the presumptive number 2. But yeah, she beat her there, and that kind of, I think that helped her to just kind of lower that threshold of like, you know what, maybe.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Would you come back as we move through the next year? Because if there's a new discovery, you're like, hey, I'm seeing something. We're trying some things. I'm going to share it with Mel. Would you come back on and share it with us? Yeah.
This wasn't as you know, I was pretty anxious about this, Mel, but
you shouldn't be. It's a unique situation. The success is undeniable. And we appreciate you helping us with our curiosity, and we'll come back to it. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. It was fun.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.